Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? Welcome to another video of Books with Brett. So today I'm making a video from my little patio that I have right outside my room at my flat. It's a really cold and rainy day. So if you guys have not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. When you're done watching this video, if you liked it, go ahead and come back and give this video a thumbs up. Today I'm going to be talking about Leonardo da Vinci, the Renaissance man, arguably the best painter ever, because I recently finished reading a biography by Walter Isaacson. He's written biographies about Steve Jobs, Benjamin Franklin, Albert Einstein, and now he is tackling Leonardo da Vinci in this biography. And so I'm making a video now to go ahead and just talk about all the things I learned about Leonardo da Vinci. I knew about Leonardo da Vinci, and, he was a painter, and I knew that he was, a pretty, big historical figure, but I didn't know much more about him. So this biography really helped me learn more about who the man was and what he did and all the areas in which he excelled in and contributed to. So, like I said, we usually know about Leonardo as a painter. We think about all the famous paintings he made, like the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, and, some of the other paintings he made. But Leonardo was crazy in terms of his curiosity, right? Like, if Leonardo had a superpower, it was curiosity, because that's what drove everything he did. Everything he did was done from the perspective of, he found the world a fascinating place. He found little things that you and I take for granted on a daily basis. They just stunned Leonardo. They just, if you see water flowing, you just see water. But Leonardo was really interested in how water works. He was really interested in human anatomy. The first example, I guess, of his curiosity kind of taking him by control is when he was a kid. He was on a hike somewhere in Tuscany, and he came across this dark cave. And when he came across this cave, he had two competing feelings. On the one hand, he felt fear, because he didn't know what was in there. It was a dark cave. And then he also felt curiosity and mystery, like, what's in that cave? I want to see what's in that cave. And he goes inside and he finds, like, the bones of this dead whale that had been dead for a long time, just sitting in the cave, like in the cave wall. And that was kind of like the beginning of him following his curiosity, his desire to understand what's behind the mysteries of life. And that's kind of the beginning of him venturing out and kind of like exploring. That would, set the tone for the rest of his life as being an explorer, someone who engages with the world on a continual basis. Leonardo starts off as a painter, and he's extremely talented because he spends a lot of his time getting down to, like, the little details behind painting. So Leonardo was actually very observant. He would observe people when they were talking. He would observe people's gestures. He would observe people's facial expressions. And he would also, he was very curious about human emotions and how the human face displays emotion. So whenever he would go about, he would observe people. He would watch them in conversations with one another. He would see how people reacted. He would look at their gestures, and he would incorporate all of those things into his paintings. And then also, Leonardo wasn't just an artist, he was a scientist. Specifically, he did a lot of, like, crazy work in anatomy. So Leonardo da Vinci, he would dissect a whole bunch of corpses. I think, if I remember correctly, he's dissected, like, over 100 corpses of dead people, just to see what the human anatomy was like, to get, like, a first glance at what the human body was like, what all of our organs were like. And he would also dissect, like, the human face to see what kind of nerves there were in the face, and the parts of the brain that were connected with those nerves, so that he could understand how the anatomical structure of the face was when people would make a smile or people would make a frown, or the different kinds of anatomical structures that underlie all of our emotional expressions. And then he would use that same information from anatomy to construct or to paint, like, paintings that seemed like they were real, real people, real life portrayals of the human face and the human anatomy in his paintings. And that just blows my mind, because Leonardo was such a curious person that he would, go so far as to, like, dissect bodies to learn more about human anatomy that he was very curious about. And then he would combine science with art in a way that was insane. He would take all the things he understood about human physiology and human anatomy, and he would apply them to his art. So this is why Leonardo da Vinci's art seems so real. Leonardo da Vinci was also ahead of his time in terms of things like inventions. He would watch birds, and it's like, dragonflies and different, like, flying insects, and he would observe the way that their wings worked, and he would watch birds as they flew, and he tried to, like, create, like, a flying machine. This is years and years before we had the helicopter or an airplane. Leonardo da Vinci was putting together in his notebooks, because he had a lot of notebooks where he would write down sketches and, drawings of his ideas, and he would try to come up with ways to make a flying machine years and years, even centuries before we ever created a flying machine. Leonardo was also someone who, he spent a lot of his time studying, like, engineering and mechanics, and he would study the flow of water because he was trying to, like, find ways where he could divert rivers and things to flow a different way. And, a lot of the inventions with things like, the drains that they use for swamps, or things even like scuba gear, all kind of, a lot of the things that, underlie those inventions all kind of come, or at least Leonardo da Vinci was thinking about those things years before the invention was ever made. So he truly was someone, like a historical figure, who was way ahead of his time. He was thinking about these things way before anyone else did. And um, it was all fueled by his curiosity. And to me, that's where Leonardo da Vinci becomes such an inspiring person, because, throughout our lives, when we're kids, we're very curious. We find every little thing in the world to be fascinating and, crazy to think about. And it's, as we live our lives, and we become accustomed to the things around us, as we adapt to our surroundings. We might see a tree when we're a kid and we think that a tree is the most crazy thing in the world, right? Like the way that it's structured, the complexity that underlies that tree. But then eventually, as we live our lives and we see tree after tree after tree after tree, it just kind of all seems like, oh, it's just a tree, or oh, it's just a plant. Or we might think that the ocean is so big and so vast when we're a kid, but then once we go to the beach like 100 times, you know, I'm from South Florida, so, I go to the beach a lot. Once you go to the beach a lot, eventually it gets to the point where it's like, it's just the beach. It's just like the water, and we kind of lose the wonder and the awe that we can find in every little thing when we really look close enough. And Leonardo is one of those historical figures that maintained his childlike sense of wonder and curiosity throughout his entire life. And, you know, that's what allowed him to become such a fascinating figure in history. He was one of the most curious people who ever existed. And, you know, he applied, he was able to make connections between things that we wouldn't think about. One big theme that you tend to find in Leonardo da Vinci's work is this idea of the microcosm and the macrocosm. And what that is pretty simple. The microcosm is us as a human, right? You kind of are your own world. what's going on in your own mind is kind of like your own little world. That's the microcosm. Like you are the microcosm. And then the macrocosm is the bigger picture. It's the planet. It's the whole earth. It's you can even go bigger than that and be the galaxy or the universe, right? So the microcosm and the macrocosm is the relationship between you as the microcosm and the bigger world, which is the macrocosm. And this is something that Leonardo spent his entire life interested in. He was interested in the macrocosm, obviously, because he was so curious about water and nature and, art and all these things. But he was also interested in the microcosm. He was interested in, human anatomy, human physiology, human gestures, human expressions, human emotions. And, the big thing for him was to combine the microcosm with the macrocosm, to look at the relationship between the human and the world that they find themselves in, the relation between the microcosm and the macrocosm. And you'll find this in some of his art. So, for example, he has a famous sketch called Vitruvian Man. So here is Vitruvian Man. This is a sketch that Leonardo da Vinci made. This is actually supposed to be him in the picture. It's supposed to be a self-portrait. And this is a very, like, geometrically precise drawing. So it's a combination of, like, the science and the geometry that Leonardo da Vinci loved, and also a combination of that with his art. And if you look at that drawing, this is really Leonardo placing himself in the macrocosm and seeing, it's kind of a drawing that symbolizes how he fits into the world, how humanity fits into the world, that we all have our own place where we fit into the bigger picture. And that's what that drawing ultimately is expressing. You also find the idea of the microcosm and the macrocosm in the Mona Lisa. With the Mona Lisa, Leonardo incorporated everything he knew about human anatomy, specifically the lips, to make a really unique smile in this painting. And as you see in the background, there's a river that seems to like flow into Mona, and then you see around her left shoulder there's a scarf, and that scarf looks like the water that Leonardo da Vinci drew in his notebooks, suggesting that the river is combining itself with Mona Lisa, and that's the connection between the microcosm, in this case Mona Lisa, the person, and the macrocosm, which is all the nature behind her that she's connected with. So here is the Last Supper. Um, and as you can see, Leonardo incorporated everything he knew about human gestures and their emotional expressions into this painting so that it told a story. As you see the painting, you see the emotions on the characters' faces, and you can tell kind of like what they're thinking at that exact moment. So overall, in reading this biography, my main takeaway is to always make sure that you stay in touch with your inner curiosity, to renew the sense of awe that you have about the world, because the world really is a fascinating place, and we never know when we're going to die. So you want to make sure that you take the time while you have it to really appreciate the world around you and make the most of it while you're still here. And that's what Leonardo da Vinci did to the fullest extent. He always lived his life, um, you know, making the most of every day and being able to appreciate the world around him. There's a quote that they talk about in the biography, and I'm like paraphrasing it somewhat, but Leonardo once said that the same way that a good day's work leads to a good night's sleep, a life well lived leads to a good death. Meaning the same way that, you can go to sleep at night and be satisfied with the day you had if you made the most out of your day. When you go to die one day, you can make the most out of that death and be happy with your death by making the most out of your life. And it's never too late to do that. It's never too late in your life to start like immediately making the most out of every single day that you have. And that's what Leonardo did. So Leonardo is inspiring not only in how curious he was as an individual and how he truly engaged the world around him, but also in terms of how he made sure that he made the most out of every day, and in turn made the most out of his life. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're looking for a book that can teach you more about Leonardo da Vinci, I would definitely recommend this book by Walter Isaacson. So if you liked this video, give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next